7,000 Greeks, 150,000 Persians, a mountain pass 15 meters wide. 3 days that changed everything. August 480 BC at Thermopylae, where the hot gates became a killing ground, and the greatest army the ancient world had seen bled out against farmers who left their fields 3 weeks earlier. Everyone knows about the 300 Spartans. Nobody talks about the 700 Thespians who stayed until the end, the 900 Helots who fought as slaves and died as warriors, the 4,000 Greeks who withdrew on day 3 so they could win at Salamis and Plataea. This is what happens when heavy bronze meets wicker shields in terrain where numbers mean nothing, when 2.5-meter spears punch through cloth armor, when discipline beats mass, when the Immortals, 10,000 elite warriors who never lose because every casualty gets replaced overnight, break against a wall of men who trained since they were 7 years old to do one thing: hold the line. He built pontoon bridges across the Hellespont using 674 ships lashed together. He dug a canal through Mount Athos, 1.5 miles long, so storms wouldn't wreck his fleet like they wrecked his father's in 492 BC. He stockpiled grain at depots across Thrace and Macedonia for 2 years. He assembled troops from 46 nations: Persians, Medes, Scythians, Bactrians, Indians, Egyptians, Phoenicians. Ionians forced to fight their Greek cousins. The core was the Immortals, 10,000 strong, always 10,000 because dead men vanish overnight and fresh soldiers fill the ranks before sunrise. They wore bronze scale armor over reinforced tunics. They carried spears and composite bows and wicker shields shaped like teardrops. They were the best infantry in Asia. They had never failed in open battle. The fleet numbered 600 to 1,200 triremes, depending on which ancient source you trust. Each trireme carried 200 rowers and 30 marines. Modern historians laugh at Herodotus when he claims 5 million total people, including support staff, but even conservative estimates put the invasion force at 120,000 to 300,000 fighting men. The largest army assembled in the ancient world to that point. Xerxes crossed into Europe in April 480 BC. By late July, he was in northern Greece. Most cities surrendered immediately. By early August, he reached Thermopylae. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Herodotus' histories, written circa 440 BC, which remains our primary eyewitness account, cross-referenced with modern archaeological excavations, published by Spiridon Marinatos in 1939, who discovered hundreds of Persian bronze arrowheads on Colonus Hill, proving the exact location of the final stand, plus geoarchaeological studies from the Journal of Field. Archaeology, 1984, by John Kraft and George Rapp, using sediment cores from 7 drilling sites in the Gulf of Malea that reconstructed the ancient coastline and proved the pass was genuinely 15 to 20 meters wide at the Middle Gate in 480 BC. Not the 5-kilometer wide modern highway you see today where the sea is retreated 4 kilometers and sediment deposits raise the ground 20 meters over 20. 500 years. Now back to the information. Spartans and Athenians working together. The alliance met at Corinth in spring 480 BC and debated strategy. First plan: hold the Vale of Tempe at the Macedonian border. They sent 10,000 hoplites north in April. They examined the terrain, multiple mountain passes. Easy to flank. They withdrew after 3 days. Second plan: dual defense, hold Thermopylae on land, hold Artemisium at sea. The pass and the strait 40 nautical miles apart working together, block the army at the gates, block the fleet in the channel, force Xerxes to fight where his numbers become a liability instead of an asset. Thermopylae was perfect defensive terrain, a coastal corridor between Mount Calidroman to the south and the Malian Gulf to the north. 4 miles long with 3 natural choke points the locals called gates, the West Gate. The Middle Gate where the old Phocian wall stood, the East Gate. In 480 BC, that Middle Gate was 15 to 20 meters wide, according to those geoarchaeological drilling studies. The sea pressed right against the cliffs. Today, the coastline is 4 kilometers away and the pass is 5 kilometers wide because rivers deposited sediment and tectonic activity lifted the bedrock, and the hot sulfur springs that gave the place its name, Thermopylae means hot gates, kept depositing mineral layers year after year. There was an ancient defensive wall at the Middle Gate built decades earlier by the Phocians to stop northern raiders. Crumbling, barely standing, the Greeks repaired it in 3 days. Behind the position, a mountain path called Anapeia wound through the oak forests. Locals used it to move between valleys. It came out at Alpinus on the coast behind the gates. The Greeks knew about it. They posted 1,000 Phocian hoplites to guard it because those men knew the local terrain. Leonidas knew this was a suicide mission. The 300 were his royal guard. But Sparta was celebrating the Carnea festival in late August. Religious law forbade military campaigns during sacred festivals. The Olympic Games were also happening. Sparta couldn't march the full army until the festivals ended, so Leonidas took his guard as a vanguard with promises the main army would follow after the Carnea ended in early September. He also brought 900 helots, state-owned slaves who served as attendants and light infantry. These men fought beside Spartans their entire lives, but had zero political rights. They would die at Thermopylae anyway. Leonidas gathered allies as he marched north. 400 Corinthians, 700 Thespians, literally every single fighting-age male their city could field. 400 Thebans, 1,000 Phocians, 500 Tegeans, 500 Orchomenians, 400 from Mycenae, 200 from Phlius, 80 from Hermione, 200 from Epidaurus, 1,000 Locrians. Herodotus tallies 5,200, not counting Spartans and Helots. Modern historians, using his numbers plus the Spartan contingent, settle on around 7,000 Greeks total when everyone assembled at the gates by mid-August. Pausanias adds 6,000 Locrians, which would make the total 11,000, but most scholars trust Herodotus more. Either way, the core force was 7,000 heavy infantry. Bell-shaped or muscled, or sometimes linothorax, laminated linen glued in 15 layers, for men who couldn't buy full bronze. The Corinthian helmet was solid bronze with cheek guards and nose guard. It protected your skull completely. It also restricted vision to a narrow slot and muffled hearing so badly you couldn't hear orders in battle. Many hoplites tied it back on their head until combat started because wearing it felt like suffocating in a bronze oven. Bronze greaves protected the shins from knee to ankle, made from a single hammered sheet fitted to your leg, no straps. They gripped by the springiness of the bronze itself. The shield, called hoplon or aspis, weighed 7 kilograms, 90 centimeters diameter, 3 layers bonded together, outer layer of thin bronze sheet, middle layer of hardwood planks connected edge to edge about half a centimeter thick, inner layer of leather. The revolutionary feature was the Argive grip invented around 600 BC. The handle sat at the rim, not the center. A leather strap wrapped your forearm at the shield's midpoint. 2 points of contact meant when the shield got hit, it never twisted or spun. Your arm stayed locked. The formation stayed tight. The primary weapon was the dory spear, 2.5 to 4.5 meters long, depending on whether you fought in front ranks or rear ranks. 2.5 centimeters thick ash wood shaft, leaf-shaped iron spearhead, bronze spike on the butt end called soriter, lizard killer in Greek, used to finish wounded enemies on the ground or plant the spear when resting. When your spear broke, you drew the xiphus sword, 60 centimeters for most Greeks. Spartans kept theirs shorter. 30 to 45 centimeters, perfect for close quarters when the phalanxes collided and there was no room to swing. Long enough to thrust through gaps in shields, short enough to draw fast when your spear snapped. Some carried the kopis, a forward curved slashing blade, but most relied on the straight xiphos. Wicker shields that weighed almost nothing and stopped arrows but crumpled against spear thrusts. Short spears barely 2 meters long, daggers, composite bows made from wood and horn and sinew that could fire 15 arrows per minute at 300-meter range. Their armor was cloth caps and scale vests for the elite units. Regular infantry wore reinforced tunics. Their doctrine was mobility in ranged combat. Soften the enemy with massed archery. Send in light infantry to exploit gaps. Finish with cavalry charges. It dominated battlefields from India to Egypt. At Thermopylae, they got 15 meters of space with cliffs on one side and sea on the other, and a stone wall manned by bronze statues who refused to break. Waiting for his fleet to reach Artemisium and establish the coordinated assault, waiting for the Greeks to see his numbers and abandon their position. 150,000 men stretching back miles. The Greeks didn't leave. They did calisthenics outside the wall. Some combed their long hair. Persian scouts reported this to Xerxes. His officers laughed. What kind of army grooms before battle? Xerxes had Demaratus with him, an exiled Spartan king living in Persia who explained Spartan customs. When Spartans comb their hair, it means they're preparing to die fighting. It's ritual purification. They're telling you they won't surrender. Xerxes sent a herald on the 5th day. The message was simple. Surrender your weapons and you'll be spared. Leonidas sent back 2 words, Molin Lob, come and take them. That phrase is carved on the Leonidas monument at Thermopylae today and serves as the motto of the Greek First Army Corps and appeared on Greek resistance flags during World War II. 2 words that meant, we're not leaving. You want our weapons? Come pull them from our corpses. A full moon according to chronological analysis. First wave, 5,000 to 10,000 Median and Scythian infantry. They advanced on the rebuilt Phocian wall with the Greeks arrayed behind it in phalanx formation, 8 ranks deep, shields overlapping, spears leveled. The front 4 ranks held spears parallel to the ground. The rear 4 ranks held spears vertical to deflect arrows raining down. The Spartans anchored the line. Other Greeks rotated in and out to keep fresh troops in front. The Medians charged. The phalanx held. Median spears were short, maybe 1.5 meters. When they tried to close with the Greeks, those 2.5-meter dory spears punched into their chests before their weapons reached Greek bodies. The ones who got close enough to fight hit bronze armor with daggers and short swords that couldn't penetrate. The wicker shields collapsed under Greek spear thrusts. The Medians packed into the narrow space, and the ones behind pushed the ones in front forward into the spear points. When they tried to retreat, their own mass trapped them. Herodotus says the Spartans used feigned retreats. Pull back suddenly. Let the Persians surge forward in disorder thinking you're running. Wheel around, crash back into them in tight formation, slaughter them. The narrow terrain meant only the front ranks could engage. The Persians behind were useless. Worse than useless. Their weight crushed their own front line into the killing zone. The medians broke after hours of this, casualties in the thousands. The Greeks lost maybe a dozen men. Xerxes watched from a throne on a hillside. Herodotus says he leapt up 3 times during the assault in shock that such a small force was holding his army. He sent in the immortals, bronze scale over reinforced linen, but they still carried the same weapons. Short spears, wicker shields, composite bows. They advanced in waves. Same result. The pass was a designed killing ground for heavy infantry. Tight space favored long spears. No flanking room, no mobility. The phalanx was an invention specifically engineered for this exact scenario. Stand shoulder to shoulder. Shield overlaps the shield of the man to your left, covering his unprotected right side. Your right side is covered by the man to your right. Everyone locks together, present spears. The first 4 ranks thrust and stab. The rear 4 ranks push the men in front forward and keep pressure constant. If anyone breaks formation, the whole line collapses and everyone dies. So nobody breaks formation. You hold until you die, or the enemy breaks. The immortals had never faced this. They attacked. They died. They fell back. The day ended with 0 Persian progress and thousands of casualties. Herodotus claims 20,000 Persians dead across all 3 days total. Modern historians consider that inflated propaganda, but even conservative estimates suggest several thousand dead or wounded on day 1 alone, given the repeated massed assaults into a fortified choke point. Same tactics, different units, more medians, more immortals rotating in with fresh troops, maybe Bactrians and Sake cavalry trying to force the position. Same result. The killing machine ground on. Greeks rotated fighters to keep exhaustion from breaking the line. Leonidas fought in the front rank. Spartan kings always led from the front, but he rotated back periodically to rest like everyone else. No heroics, no single combat, just mechanical slaughter. One Greek warrior, when told that Persian arrows would be so numerous they'd block the sun, replied, "Then we'll fight in the shade." That line became the motto of the Greek 20th Armored Division. Some sources attribute it to a Spartan named Dienekes, others to Leonidas himself. Either way, it captures the mentality. We came here to die. Make it expensive. The second day ended like the first. Persians withdrew. Greeks held. Casualties mounting on the Persian side. Minimal Greek losses. Xerxes was furious and perplexed. He commanded 150,000 men. He couldn't crack 20 meters of wall defended by 7,000 farmers. The mountain trail that wound behind Greek lines and emerged at Alpinus on the coast to their rear. Leonidas knew the path existed. That's why he posted 1,000 Phocians to guard it. But the Phocians were spread across miles of rough forested terrain, watching multiple branches of the trail. Ephialtes offered to personally guide Persian troops through the mountains. Xerxes gave the mission to Hydarnes, commander of the Immortals. Herodotus says Hydarnes took the Immortals up the path, but the Immortals had been bloodied in 2 days of frontal assaults. Diodorus Siculus, writing in the 1st century BC, says Hydarnes commanded 20,000 men for the flanking maneuver. That probably included whatever remained of the Immortals, plus reinforcements from other units. They set out at dusk on the second day, night march through the oak forests. The path was narrow and rocky. Hours of climbing in near darkness. At dawn on the 3rd day, likely August 20th or 21st, the Phocians heard rustling, oak leaves crunching under thousands of feet. They jumped up and formed a defensive line. They saw the Persian column descending the slope. They fired arrows. The Persians returned fire with their composite bows and kept advancing. The Phocians fell back to a ridge to make a stand at higher ground. Hydarnes didn't engage them. He didn't need to capture the ridge. He just needed to get past them. The Persians pushed down the mountain toward Alpinus. The Phocians were bypassed. Tactically irrelevant. A runner reached Leonidas at the wall just after dawn. The Persians are coming down behind you. They'll reach your rear by mid-morning. You're about to be surrounded. Get out before encirclement. Live to fight at better ground. The Spartans would stay. Spartan law forbade retreat. The Helots would stay because they served Sparta. The Thespians volunteered to stay. All 700 of them. Every fighting male their city possessed. They knew Xerxes would burn Thespiae when he reached Boeotia. They stayed anyway. Multiple ancient sources note that Thespians had a cultural tradition of suicidal last stands. They did it twice more in later wars. Just walked into unwinnable fights and died to the last man. The Thebans stayed, 400 of them. Herodotus suggests they were kept as hostages. Other sources say they volunteered. Either way, they stayed until the end. The Phocians on the mountain were still on their ridge, bypassed but not destroyed. The rest of the Greeks withdrew. 4,000 men retreated south down the coast. They would regroup. They would fight at Salamis in September and destroy the Persian fleet. They would win at Plataea in August 479 BC and break the invasion. But first, the rearguard had to buy them time. They moved forward into the wider section of the pass east of the wall where they had room to swing weapons. They wanted space to kill. Leonidas commanded from the front rank. Persian infantry crashed against the phalanx. The fighting was different now. No defensive wall to anchor on. Just open combat in the pass. The Greeks fought with controlled fury. Spears thrust, shields bashed, swords slashed when spears broke. Persians fell in piles. Then a spear found Leonidas. He went down. The Greeks surged forward over his body. They fought to recover him. 4 separate times they pushed the Persians back and pulled Leonidas' corpse toward their lines. 4 times the Persians counterattacked. Then Hydarnes and the flanking force appeared from the eastern exit of the Anapeia path. The Greeks were surrounded. They fell back to a small hill behind where the Phocian wall had stood, Kolonos Hill, a defensive mound maybe 15 meters high. The Thebans broke. They raised their hands and walked toward the Persians with palms up. Most were taken alive. Xerxes later had them branded with the royal mark, permanent slaves. The rest kept fighting. 300 Spartans, 900 Helots, 700 Thespians, about 1,900 men on a hilltop completely encircled by 100,000 Persians. They fought with spears until every spear shattered. They fought with swords until the blades broke. Herodotus says they fought with fists and teeth when they had no weapons left. But Xerxes had learned from 2 days of frontal assaults into bronze armor. No more close combat. He surrounded the hill at range and ordered the archers forward. Thousands of archers. Tens of thousands of arrows. Volleys that literally darkened the sky, just like that Spartan had joked about. The Greeks raised their shields overhead, locked them together, formed a shield roof. The arrows found gaps, necks, thighs, armpits, the backs of knees. Bronze protected the torso and head, but you can't armor everything. Men dropped. More volleys, more dead. The survivors crouched behind corpses using bodies as additional shields, more arrows. When the last Greek fell, Xerxes sent infantry up the hill to finish anyone still breathing with daggers and spears. Total silence. Retreat on day 3. Persian casualties. Herodotus claims 20,000 killed total. Modern historians call that Greek propaganda designed to make the defeat look like a victory. But even conservative estimates suggest 10 to 15,000 Persian casualties across 3 days. Some modern analyses go as high as 20 to 30,000 when you include wounded who died from infection in the following weeks. Context matters. If Xerxes had 150,000 troops and lost 20,000, that's 13% casualties for a tactical victory. Devastating. If he lost 10,000, that's still 7%. In ancient warfare, those are catastrophic losses for an army that still has to conquer the rest of Greece and maintain supply lines and garrison conquered territory. 3 days, 50 meters of killing ground. The cost to force that passage broke the invasion's momentum before it truly began. At Salamis, on September 24th, 480 BC, the Greek triremes destroyed the Persian fleet in the narrow straits. 368 Greek ships against 600 Persian ships. The Greeks used the same tactical principle as Thermopylae, a fight in confined space where numbers mean nothing and superior equipment and training win. They sank or captured 200 Persian ships and lost only 40 of their own. Xerxes lost control of the Aegean. Without naval superiority, his army in southern Greece couldn't be supplied. His position became untenable. He retreated north to Thessaly with most of the army and left his brother-in-law Mardonius with perhaps 80,000 troops to winter in Greece and finish the conquest in spring. On August 27th, 479 BC at Plataea, the combined Greek army, 38,700. Hoplites from 20 Greek cities, including 10,000 Spartans, annihilated Mardonius' force. Mardonius died in the fighting. The Persian army broke. The survivors fled north. The invasion was finished. But none of that happens without those 3 days in August that bought the time to evacuate Athens and position the fleet at Salamis. Spiridon Marinatos excavated Kolonos Hill in 1939. He found hundreds of bronze arrowheads, Persian design, 3-bladed socketed points identical to arrowheads found at Marathon, and in Persian contexts across Anatolia and Mesopotamia. The concentration on Kolonos Hill proved that's where the final stand occurred, not the smaller hill closer to the wall where older tradition had placed it. Kolonos matches Herodotus' description perfectly. A low hill behind the wall where surrounded men could make a defensive stand. The arrowheads sit in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens today, Case 14. You can see them. Physical proof of arrows raining down on that hilltop 2,465 years ago. The geoarchaeological studies proved the terrain matched ancient descriptions. John Kraft and George Rapp drilled 7 core holes in the sediments of the Gulf of Malea in 1982 to 1984. They analyzed sediment layers, pollen counts, microfossils, sea level markers. They reconstructed the ancient coastline with precision. In 480 BC, the sea was 3 to 4 kilometers closer than today. The pass at the middle gate was genuinely 15 to 20 meters wide. The cliffs came right down to the water. Today, you drive through on a wide highway with farmland stretching kilometers to a distant coastline. The ground is 18 to 20 meters higher from sediment accumulation. Hot springs depositing minerals, rivers washing material down from Mount Caladrimon, tectonic uplift from earthquakes over 25 centuries. But the cores prove the ancient sources weren't exaggerating. The terrain really did funnel 150,000 men into a space where only a few hundred could fight at once. The total cost equaled 3 to 6 months' income for a middle-class farmer. That's why hoplites were property-owning citizens. The poor couldn't afford armor. They fought as light infantry with slings and javelins if they fought at all. Sparta was different. The Spartan state owned vast amounts of land worked by helot slaves. Full citizens, Spartiates, didn't farm. They trained. The state provided equipment, or you inherited your father's panoply when he died. Every male Spartiate was a professional soldier in a world of part-time militia. That's why 300 Spartans could anchor 7,000 Greeks. The training gap was enormous. Spartan boys entered the Agoge military school at age 7. They left home. They lived in barracks. They got minimal food, so they learned to steal and forage. Getting caught stealing meant a beating for being sloppy, not for theft. They fought in contests with older boys. They endured physical punishment to build pain tolerance. They practiced with weapons daily. At 12, they got 1 cloak per year. No shoes, no additional clothing, sleep outside in winter, learn to endure. At 20, they graduated to the army. From 20 to 30, they lived in military barracks and ate communal meals and trained constantly. At 30, you became a full citizen with political rights, but you still trained and served until age 60. This created soldiers who functioned as a single organism, no individual glory-seeking, no breaking ranks to chase enemies, just the phalanx, the machine. The 300 at Thermopylae were all over 30, veterans, married men with children. Leonidas selected them specifically because they had sons to carry on their family lines. He knew this was suicide. These weren't young warriors seeking glory. These were experienced killers who understood they were trading their lives for time. Their city was destroyed anyway. Xerxes burned Thespiae to foundations in early September 480 BC. But those 700 bought time for 4,000 Greeks to escape and regroup. Plutarch, writing in the 1st century AD, mentions the Thespian sacrifice and notes it's criminally forgotten compared to Spartan glory. Modern monuments at Thermopylae now include the Thespians. A bronze statue erected in 1997 shows a Thespian hoplite. The inscription reads, "In memory of the 700 Thespians. The Helots died nameless, 900 men who fought beside Spartans their entire lives but had zero rights because they were property. They couldn't retreat because slaves don't give themselves orders. But Herodotus mentions them. They were there, they fought, they died on that hill. Some ancient sources suggest the Helots fought with particular fury because dying in battle might mean their families would be freed. That probably didn't happen. Sparta needed Helot labor, but the hope might have driven them. Regardless, 900 men who history forgot fought and died at Thermopylae. The version for the Spartans: stranger, tell the Spartans that here we lie obedient to their words. 7 Greek words in the original. A modern reconstruction stands at Thermopylae today. The Thespians got their own epitaph. Here, once against 3 million Peloponnesians fought 4,000. Propaganda. 3 million is absurd, but it shows how fast numbers inflated. By the time Herodotus wrote 50 years later, Xerxes' army had grown to 5 million total. Modern analysis based on ancient logistics suggests 120,000 to 300,000 fighting men is realistic, still overwhelming. 20 to 1 odds on day 1, 50 to 1 on day 3. The Spartans became instant legends. Sparta erected a stone lion at Thermopylae, marking where Leonidas fell. The lion is lost. A modern bronze statue erected in 1955 stands near the site. When Alexander conquered Persia 150 years later, he visited Thermopylae and paid respects. Modern military academies still teach it. 2. Mass infantry warfare. The key innovation was the Argive grip shield around 600 BC, which allowed shields to lock together edge to edge, creating an unbroken wall. Combined with longer spears, the dory replacing earlier shorter spears, and bronze armor, the phalanx became unstoppable in direct combat on level ground. The weakness was mobility. Phalanx couldn't chase routed enemies effectively because breaking formation meant vulnerability. Phalanx couldn't fight on rough terrain where the line couldn't stay straight. Phalanx was vulnerable to flanking, which is exactly what happened at Thermopylae when Ephialtes showed the mountain path. But in a narrow pass, with cliffs on one side and sea on the other, the phalanx was a perfect killing machine. The Spartans were simply the best at executing a tactic every Greek city used. Their advantage was training. Constant drilling until every movement was automatic. Olympic-level athletic conditioning. Absolute discipline. When other Greek cities fielded militias of farmers who trained a few weeks per year, Sparta fielded professionals who had trained since childhood. That's why Leonidas' 300 could hold the center while allied contingents rotated in and out on the flanks. The name comes from their replacement system. The unit was always 10,000 strong. Fall in battle and your equipment goes to a replacement. The roster never drops below 10,000. This created an illusion of invincibility. But at Thermopylae, they died like everyone else. Their equipment was wrong for the terrain. Wicker shields collapsed against spear thrusts. Short spears couldn't reach past those 2.5-meter dory spears. Composite bows were useless against bronze armor. The immortals were elite at the wrong warfare style. Persian doctrine was maneuver, skirmish with arrows, flank with cavalry. At Thermopylae, there was nowhere to maneuver. They had to fight heavy infantry combat with wrong equipment and training. They died in thousands. Herodotus, writing around 440 BC, says Xerxes' army and navy and support staff totaled 5,283,220 people. He claims when they counted the army, they built an enclosure that held 10,000 men, then packed it repeatedly until everyone was counted. He says the army drank rivers dry when they stopped to water the troops. He says it took 7 days and 7 nights for the entire force to cross the Hellespont bridges. Modern historians dismiss these numbers as impossible. You cannot feed 5 million people marching through ancient Greece. The roads couldn't handle it. The logistics would require modern infrastructure. If the army marched in column at standard ancient march spacing, the front would reach Thermopylae, while the rear was still leaving Babylon 15, 100 miles away. The realistic numbers come from analyzing ancient carrying capacity. How much grain can you stockpile? How many pack animals can transport it? How many men can you feed with ancient agricultural surplus from Persia and conquered territories? The analysis suggests 100,000 to 300,000 is the plausible range. Some modern historians go as low as 80,000. Others as high as 300,000. Let's say 150,000 fighting men plus maybe another 50,000 support staff. That's still the largest invasion force in the ancient world. That's still overwhelming numbers. But it's not 5 million. Herodotus inflated Persian numbers to make Greek victories look more impressive. Greek historians wanted to emphasize that their culture defeated a vastly superior empire through discipline and free citizenship versus Persian slave armies. There's truth in that narrative, but the numbers got exaggerated. Those numbers are accurate within a few hundred, based on inscriptions and monuments erected after. Sparta had maybe 8,000 Spartiates total. Sending 300 plus 900 helots was significant. Thespiae sending 700 suggests a city population around 20,000. 7,000 total represents a major defensive effort, even if not the full Greek capacity. Some historians argue Thermopylae was a meaningless defeat. The Persians won. They took the pass. They burned Athens. The real victories were Salamis and Plataea. Why glorify a loss? But that misses the point. Thermopylae bought time. 3 days of delay while 7,000 Greeks held 150,000 Persians. 3 days for Athens to evacuate civilians to Salamis and Troezen. 3 days for the Greek fleet to concentrate at Artemisium, then fall back to Salamis in good order. 3 days that cost Xerxes 10 to 20,000 casualties, depending on which estimate you trust. 3 days that damaged Persian morale and proved Greek heavy infantry could shatter Persian attacks. When the fleets met at Salamis on September 24th, the Greeks fought with confidence because they'd seen Persians bleed at Thermopylae. When the armies met at Plataea 10 months later, the Greeks knew Persian numbers didn't guarantee victory. Thermopylae demonstrated that terrain and tactics could neutralize numerical superiority. That lesson won the war. The Spartan sacrifice became the rallying cry. The Thespian sacrifice was honored with monuments. The story spread across Greece within weeks. The epitaphs were carved within months. By the time Salamis happened, every Greek warrior knew about Thermopylae. They knew 300 Spartans and 700 Thespians chose death over retreat. They knew the hot gates became a killing ground. They knew Greeks could win. In 2013, researchers led by Christopher Matthew and Matthew Trundle published Beyond the Gates of Fire, analyzing the battlefield with modern surveying techniques and geological studies. Their work confirmed the pass width, confirmed the cliff positions, confirmed that the sea really did press against the mountains in 480 BC. In August 2025, the archaeologists published new analysis of the arrowheads using metallurgical testing. The bronze composition matches Persian sources from Persepolis and Susa. The 3-bladed socketed design is distinctly Persian. Some show impact damage from hitting rock or bone. Physical proof of the arrow storm that killed the last defenders. No Greek bodies have been found. Herodotus says Xerxes had his men bury most Persian dead in mass graves, covered with leaves and earth to hide the losses from his arriving fleet. He left about 1,000 Persian bodies visible to show casualties, but buried 19,000 to conceal the scale. The Greeks were cremated according to custom, or their bodies were left where they fell and scavenged by locals over the following months. 2,500 years of erosion and sediment burial means finding human remains is nearly impossible, but the arrowheads remain. Bronze doesn't decay. The geological evidence remains. Sediment cores don't lie. These are real men. Aristodemus, who survived because he had an eye infection and couldn't fight. He was branded a coward and died at Plataea a year later, seeking redemption. Eurytus, who had the same eye infection but fought anyway and died. Pantites, who was away carrying a message and survived, he hanged himself in shame when he returned to Sparta. The 297 whose names are mostly lost. Leonidas, son of Anaxandritus, 60 years old, king of Sparta, dead on the second day of the final assault. His body recovered by his men 4 times, finally lost when the Persians surrounded the hill. Xerxes later had Leonidas' head cut off and mounted on a stake as an insult. The body was recovered after Plataea and returned to Sparta, where he was buried with full honors and funeral games were held annually. The inscription exists. The names are real. This isn't mythology. 300 men walked to their deaths in August 480 BC. 700 Thespians joined them. 900 helots fought nameless beside them. On a hill 15 meters high, where bronze arrowheads still emerge from the soil when it rains, where the sea once touched cliffs now 4 kilometers inland, where the hot gates became the place, 7,000 Greeks held 150,000 Persians for 3 days and changed the course of Western civilization by refusing to break.